You're still listening to Power Talk with me, Aldrin St-Pierre. We continue our reflection on the proposals that the ANC has made, including the resolutions that they have made as well around how to combat corruption within the state. We now will be speaking to Mapaila, who's the SACP's first Deputy General Secretary. We're also taking your calls on 0861 987 000. You can also tweet at Aldrin St-Pierre, hashtag Power Talk, and also tweet at PowerFM 987. But Mapaila, good morning and welcome to Power Talk.
Good morning, Adrian, and good morning to our listeners.
Thank you so much. Let's start off the conversation from where we left off with Babu Njali before we got to the issue around sex work, and that is around the internal contestation within the ANC. I just quickly want to read this resolution that was read out by the President. He said that guidelines on the ANC's approach to internal leadership contests in elective meetings and conferences of the organization will be developed, especially rules for lobbying and campaigning. This will take into account the organization's experiences over many years and will be guided by the overriding imperative to ensure that the internal democratic processes to protect the movement's integrity and to do indeed produce the best cadres to lead transformation. What's the SACP's take on that?
Well, that for us is important, except that what has now infiltrated that space has been the dominant role of factions and the use of resources, money from all different sources to influence the democratic outcomes, therefore undermining the essence of a democratic outcome that would have based abilities of individuals, historical record, and many other factors that are important in the consideration of leadership positions in the movement. All of those are thrown out of the window when people are focusing on petty interests, primitive accumulation of their own, and therefore they become a small groups that then amass resources. I mean, it's quite important. One comrade was saying to me one day, we were together in the Youth Congress some years in the 80s, and he said, a person like me will never ever serve in the ANC PEC because I'm worthless. I said, what do you mean you are worthless when you have contributed so immensely in the underground, in the youth movement, in the student movement, even in armed struggle? He said, no, to reach that level, you need a minimum of 6 million. Where would I find it? So that's how money has penetrated the democratic space. So we hope in the development of those guidelines, it will really take us to a situation where money is not a major factor in the determination of leadership in the movement.
And how does it happen then that some of the influences of these so-called democratic decisions become big corporate, and then they are able to also have an influence on the outcome of those democratic decisions?
Yes, because the delegates are then bought. So the delegates don't care about the strategic mandate of the organization, of their branches, for instance. When they arrive in conferences, they are lumped up into different places where they are accommodated, and they follow the regional guidelines and even provincial guidelines, things that actually have been alien to the movement's tradition. Part of the movement's own foundation has been to fight against regionalism, tribalism, and so forth. But in some instances, these things come alive when regions are coordinated. So the democratic space in a region gets squeezed by this interest through, for instance, the regional secretary or regional chairpersons being the key persons that are necessarily have to be captured by interest groups in order to dominate the region. And that region then has the ability to discuss with other regions and therefore influence the provincial dynamics. So that this intervention, I think, we think it will go a long way, perhaps in highlighting those questions and actually even prohibiting such kind of tendencies and actions.
Does it at all warrant an investigation to these particular claims? Because this is not the first time that these claims have been made. They've been made even before the time of President Cyril Ramaphosa, even before the time of former President Jacob Zuma as well. So does it warrant an internal investigation into this to have so that the party, probably the alliance as well, has documentation around this is the proof that we have and this is how the influence takes place, so that when you come to a decision around coming up with the rules around internal campaigning, how you make sure that that particular aspect around the influence of delegates is eradicated?
Well, to the extent that we have reached a crisis point, and one source of that crisis point is this leadership contest, because ANC positions guarantee someone to different forms of deployment, and those deployments do not necessarily have to conform to the strategic intentions of the ANC, but rather to deliver to the interest of those that have propelled the particular leaders to different positions. It becomes important, but nonetheless, you are right, it is not a new phenomenon. What we think is happening is not necessarily an investigation per se, is to develop firmer guidelines that will rule out individuals who abuse the processes of the organization. I mean, there's no doubt in the past, I personally have reported incidences where people have carried large sums of money into conferences, were distributing it, we gave them names, and there was no action against such kind of individuals, because it was a common culture. So it was like when we reported these matters, we're like, where do you come from? Where do you live? Because this is exactly what is happening across the board. With this, we think such kind of things will then be able to be dealt with decisively by the leadership collectives.
And I raised this particular point that this is nothing new. Also looking at the Honey Memo, you know, over 50 years since that particular memo, and it would seem though some of the issues that were raised in those memos still find expression in the current democratic dispensation. Look at what he says, for instance, on the issue around careerism and opportunistic tendencies. He says the principle of thorough selection of cadres should be on the basis of merit, and such selection should never be delegated to an individual. And he also speaks about the issue around careerism.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, at the time, also learning from the experiences of where the comrades were and the general neglect, particularly in the context of the Honey Memorandum, of those who were in the armed struggle. So it's the same in this regard, where, for instance, leadership collective effectively have no say. If you look at the behavior of provinces towards the NEC, is disconcerting, because them condescending in the manner that they approach the leaders, and the leaders sometimes can't respond effectively to those because they know these are the anchor pillars for their re-election in the next term. So the leadership authority has been waned and destroyed or weakened by these petty interests at different levels, the provinces to the national and the regions to the provinces. The notion of branches being the principal structures of the organization is really just there constitutionally, because the branches are then coordinated at different levels, but largely they have little say, or their say is weakened all the time towards leadership selection processes. But in any case, also that the leadership collective, if the leadership is fractionalized, the point that Comrade Honey is making about proper selection will be fractionalized, and therefore merit will be disregarded by even a competent leadership if that leadership is fractionalized. So that is why it's important that all the value systems of the movement must be brought into perspective when leaders are being selected for particular positions, and at the center of it is the question of merit. the ability to serve the people selflessly, not the movement. We have always affirmed this point. The serving of the people is primary to the serving of the movement, because the movement is just a mere instrument to serve the people. So even when we were in NK, we took oath. Our oath was about the people of South Africa, not the ANC, not the SACP, who were co-founders of Umkhonto weSizwe, but the people of South Africa. So the same value system was the value system of the cadres of the movement broadly, that their interest was to serve the people of the nation selflessly and wholeheartedly. Failure to do that, you will not even be given strategic deployment or even positions of leadership. In any case, at a particular point in time, it was not so easy to be in the leadership. And even when we were in the leadership, it was a threatening thing. But now the conditions are different. But I think adapting to the new conditions, but keeping firm the value system of the movement and the necessity to continue to serve the people and accountability to the movement and the people as a whole becomes important in that process. So this intervention, we hope, will reposition the movement to look into its value system and its conduct differently.
Yeah, and actually, somebody once said to me that for the mere fact that you have 8 presidential candidates or people contesting to be the president of the ANC just tells you how low the bar had been set back in 2017. But I'm going to go back again to that question around an investigation into these allegations of vote buying. Isn't that important?
Yes, that one is very, very important, because a vote buying has other implications. In many instances, we have been, as a party, our structures have been victims of those who have been bought as vote holders in ANC conferences, who, when they realized that party structures on a particular matter were expressing different opinions, they descended to party meetings to attack and disrupt them. And this matters even one. There was one in Mpumalanga where our people were attacked in broad daylight, in full view of media, video cameras and everything else. The people were known. They appeared openly in different newspapers. The City Press was one of them. Investigations were done. No action was ever taken against. So vote buying is such that when people have reached that stage, the leadership structures have been corrupted. They don't even conform to procedures in the organization. In one instance, for instance, also this had happened in Mpumalanga, where a series of delegates who, when they arrived at Congress, were told that they've already registered. People have registered in their names, and the marshals and the security that was set up remove the real delegates forcefully. So the vote buying is an extremely important intervention to do away with, because it has been disrupting organizational processes in order to ensure that a canon fodder of voters is brought into conference hall. In fact, in one instance, people who were not even members were brought into a week in advance, put in a hotel, and trained how to sing liberation songs.
What?
Yes, and this has been well-known things, because money has become a massive factor.
So why a rehearsal?
Yes, that's what has happened in many instances. We reported this.
How far back is this?
Well, that was, I think, not long towards the ANC Nasrec, I guess. But this also happened in Mpumalanga. So it has been many cases where similar kind of things are happening. So a conference, it's a conference for the sake of it. It's predetermined. And democratic structures, whether branches seats and nominate so and so, it's a non-factor, because the nominated delegate will never arrive at the conference hall, because when they arrive there, their name has already been registered by somebody else. When they try to argue, the marshals just take them away, because they are causing mayhem and problems at the conference.